the music industry has been slowly dying, and a new version is emerging. When people refer to record labels and the business at large, they're typically talking about the majors or the major labels. When I say major labels, I'm referring to the gigantic labels that own a large percentage of the music in the business. Universal, Sony, Warner. And the sub-labels they control make up 70% of the music business. That last 30% is independent, but that number is growing little by little every year. Now, when most people hear the horror stories about record labels and record deals, 99% of the time, it's from those majors. Last year, my students signed 447 records, and they signed to all kinds of labels. So we have a really good view of what's really going on, and what's happening is fascinating. So let's dig in. First, if you don't know, my name's Justin. I run Cosmic Academy. We're an artist development school, and we've been around now for over 12 years. We've worked with over 800 producers and artists. And these artists, they signed to great labels: Defected, Spinnin, Monstercat, Anjuna, and even the majors like Universal and Sony. They play the biggest shows like Ultra and Tomorrowland. We used to have 4 students play EDC. So yes, we have a lot of data collected from our community of students. Let's take a scenario as an example. I just had a student sign one record with a large major label, and then that same student signed to an independent label. Which of those records do you think did better? Obviously the one with the big major label, right? Because they have all the money and all the resources. Incorrect. The record with the major label did nothing. The independent release did far better. What I didn't tell you is that the independent label is actually run by artists. And yes, this is a new practice that is happening today. Major labels sign certain kinds of deals. They love to sign something called a 360 deal. A 360 deal is when a label signs an extremely large amount of your music for a very large amount of time, and it's exclusive. So what that means is you have to stay at that label and you can't sign music elsewhere. Exclusive. And it could be a lot of music. It could be 10 albums worth of music over a large amount of time, like 20 years. And because it's 360, the label becomes your everything. They're your manager, they're your booking agent. They handle everything and they're taking money from everything. And this is how most of the record business was for the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And that's where you hear those very famous horror stories, whether it's Prince or David Bowie. It's from those types of deals with those types of big major labels. But a lot has changed in the past 10 years or so. Of the 447 records that our students signed last year, almost none of them were 360 deals. Most of those signings were single deals, which is just one song with one label. Or they're what's called an option deal. An option deal is more than one song. It could be, let's say, 3, 4, 5 songs, but it's not as intense with the exclusivity. You're still allowed to sign afterwards with other labels. The problem with the major label deals is they're old. They're not adapting to the new times. And they're kind of running like a casino business. The way it works is they place a lot of bets. They'll do 100 deals with 100 artists. They'll lock them in forever with tons of music, tons of exclusivity for a long time. And if 99 of those 100 fail, they don't care as long as one of them is Katy Perry. And then what happens to those 99 failed deals? Well, those artists are sometimes stuck there forever. They get forgotten about, the label no longer pays attention or puts resources behind them, and that's when you hear the horror stories. But that doesn't mean that all labels are bad, because we're not seeing that from these newer artist-run independent labels. When my students sign to a label and it's just one song, one label, if that label sucks, they'll leave and try a different label. And that's kind of a good thing because you're not locked in and it incentivizes that label to do a better job. Because hey, they don't want you leaving and going to another label, which you're allowed to do. Also, a lot of these independent labels are run by artists. And today, the artist's ability to promote, it's massive. I'll give you a few examples from our school. One of our students is Nostalgics. She joined our program about 6 years ago, and she's been on tons of great labels, and she's never had to sign a 360 deal. She's doing great. You know, she just played Tomorrowland, she just played Ultra, she tours the world. And if she has a record that's right for, let's say, Dim-Mak, she'll go with them, but she's not locked in with them. And if she has a record that's right for Deadbeats, she'll go there. And what's interesting about both those labels is they're run by artists. Dim-Mak is Steve Aoki's label. Deadbeats is Zed's Dead's label. So nostalgics in those deals can put in to do tours with them. She'll jump on their radio show. She'll get support from other artists on that label. You know, there's this very communal thing that's happening. It doesn't happen with the majors because those are these big corporations. You know, it's not run by artists. But these types of labels, these newer types of labels, it's run by artists for artists, and it's very communal. You know, these artists are incentivized to help each other. When Nostalgics played Red Rocks, one of the coolest venues, one of the coolest shows you can do, that was through her deal with the label Deadbeats. You know, she went on a tour, and that was with the labels Confession, which is Chami's label, and AC Slater's label, which is Nightbase. By the way, I know I'm using my students as examples. If you're wondering what's that about, we have a school. Our development program is sold out months in advance, but we are always looking for new and great applicants. We take very small, intimate classes of about 15 people. So if you want to apply, I'll leave a link below in the comments. Let's look at another example. Our student Bexy. She signs with Anjuna, Toolroom, Insomniac, Thrive, all sorts of great labels. And when she signs with Anjuna, that's an artist label run by Above and Beyond. She's going to get those extra benefits. You know, she'll play concerts with Above and Beyond. She'll do their big festival that they have. She plays on their radio show, Group Therapy, that gets 10 million listeners every week. Then she'll collab with other artists on that label. Our student Charles D, it's the same thing. He's really big in the techno world. He signed to Prida, which is Eric Prydz' label. Then he did a tour with Eric Prydz. He signed to Drum Code, which is Adam Bayer's label. And Drum Code is not just a label, right? It's this artist camp. Drum Code has their own concerts and tours and festival. So this is such an interesting avenue for artists today. And it makes sense why it works. You know, when you look at the old big majors, they're corporations and they think like corporations. And corporations don't have the fan base that artists have. They don't DJ their own radio shows, right? They don't put on their own artist-run festivals. Corporations don't have big social media followings. I mean, even the biggest labels like Sony has 800,000 followers. Diplo has 7 million followers on Instagram. So Diplo's ability to promote an artist, like Diplo has promoted our students Calusa when they signed to Diplo's label. And that promotional ability might be more than a Sony. And Diplo can push them out. Diplo can put them on his shows. I mean, Diplo has his own radio station on SiriusXM satellite. So that ecosystem is there. And to be honest, of the 400 plus records that we oversaw last year, there's almost no horror stories. That whole notion of being slaves to the record labels, those are major labels and 360 deals. And what our data is showing us is that their model is slowly dying. And now this new model of artist labels run by artists for artists, we think that's the future. So I would strongly recommend going towards that direction. You know, seek out smaller artist-run labels, make relationships with the artists themselves. You know, that should allow you to have more attention than some big corporation. Yeah, is it cool to say that you got signed by Universal or Capitol or Atlantic? Yeah, but you might sign there and just get bookshelved. Or maybe they have a big release coming out that week from a huge artist and they can't pay attention to your music. And we have plenty of artists that completely skip those labels and do really well with the independents. Now, if you have absolutely no interest in signing to any type of label, whether it's major or independent or whatever, and maybe you think all of them should be destroyed, I totally get that too. And if you're gonna be self-releasing, then you're gonna have to up your marketing game because it's all on you, right? So I'm gonna put up a video here next about what to do on Spotify and the streaming sites to maximize that marketing if you are doing it on your own. Go check that one next, and I'll see you in there.